All right, I am here today with Yannick Kiggen from Belgium. How you doing, Yannick?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Welcome to the Bonsai Network podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me as well. Looking forward to this episode. Yeah.
Yeah, it should be fun. So, you and I have actually known each other for quite a while, I guess. We met, I think, for the first time in Japan,
Sure.
way back in the day. We'll get into sort of why you were in Japan and what you were doing there a little bit
Yeah.
later in this episode. But I thought, for starters, it might be a good idea for you to kind of introduce yourself, tell everybody where you're from, where you got interested in bonsai, maybe how old you were, and some of your experiences there.
Okay. Super. So everyone, my name is Yannick Kiggen. I'm from Yama Bonsai Studio. That's my business here in Belgium. I started with bonsai when I was around 10 years old, more or less, and then from the age of 12, I started to work at uh, Momiji Studio, Bonsai Studio in Diepenbeek in Belgium with a professional cultural Paul Polmans. I worked there for 8 years, more or less. And after that, I thought it was time to go my own way. And I got the opportunity because of Peter Warren to start at Shunka-en. So then my journey at Shunka-en began and was there for around 5 months, more or less. It was a great time. A lot of work, hard work, but very nice. He's quite a strict person, and it's quite nice to see. So yeah, it was a fun time over there. Then after that, I started my journey here in Belgium again with founding, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah, Yama Bonsai Studio. And from then on, everything's got better and better. Soon, probably, I will also have bonsai as a full occupation. We're also starting because my garden is not that very big, and everything is starting to get packed with trees. So we're starting to look for a different house um, with somewhere where I can give classes and a place where I can have some stock like materials for bonsai and pots and stuff like that. Because now I have material at my father's place or my parents' place. I'm at the parents of my girlfriend's place and stuff like that. So I need to go to every time to different places to collect stuff that I need to send to different people because it's in short time we also started the web shop and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So, how old were you when you went to Mr. Kobayashi's nursery, Shunka-en, in Japan, and how did you come about doing that with Peter Warren?
When I had the age of 16 or 17, I got the opportunity to give a demonstration in Bath in England, in the UK, and there I met Peter Warren. And because it was a long time dream of me to go to Japan, because it's for me it was like this is what I really want to do. Um, when I was, I think it was 8 or 9 years ago that I was there. Could have been seven, maybe. I don't know. I've eight, I think. So then, in my head, I contacted Pete. In my head, I had the idea to send an email to Peter Warren and to look what was possible. And um, he talked with Kobayashi's son, the Oyakata, about getting me there. So then, I worked there for 2 weeks to try it out, and then after that, I went from September to November or December. I worked there over there. So, and then I head back to Belgium again.
Okay, yeah. So I know that I talked to Andre
Yeah.
last week in last week's podcast about his experiences at Mr. Kimura's nursery as an
Hmm.
apprentice there. I know that Mr. Kobayashi is a pretty strict guy, similar to Mr. Kimura. So
True.
what was kind of the schedule of a day there? What time did you start in the morning? What kind of things did you work on? How
Um,
long did you work during the day?
Most of the time we start at 6 o'clock, and then we had breakfast, and then after breakfast we started with working and stuff like that. And we had to work around until 11 or 12 o'clock in the evening. So I don't know if it's already changed, but I think it's quite a good thing. And he was quite a strict person, but he also had certain values, what was very important. Like if we were eating that, if we had rice in a bowl, that the last piece of rice we had to eat as well. So because that's a small grain, and with that grain you can sow, or how do you call it, sow, and you can have different other rice grains again. So he tried to teach us not only values in bonsai, but to be humble and to respect nature and stuff like that as well. So that was also quite interesting.
Okay, what was sort of his teaching style? Because I know, I've seen him on TV quite a bit. I actually know Mr. Kobayashi quite well because we take our tour groups there every year.
Yeah.
But my guess is that the way he treats our groups when we come in is very different to how he treats the apprentices behind the scenes. So maybe you could kind of tell us what his teaching style was like. How strict was he? What were the kind of things that he would teach you on a regular basis on an average day?
Yeah. He's very active in a kind of way. So for his age, he has a lot of energy. So when he teaches, he shows it, and he does. All the time we had to watch, because it was not really like explaining stuff like that. But he would work on a tree, and he showed us how we had to do it and stuff like that. But in the time when I was there, he was very much into Chinese bonsai, more or less, because he had a lot of Chinese customers. So, but the way he teach was quite strict and stuff like that. Well, it was quite fun. Sometimes we had a good laugh and stuff like that. And he, like, how do I have to say it? He has a lot of energy, so he's working very fast and hyperactive onto the tree. I don't know if you can imagine, but also like showman a little bit. So like when he's on stage, he puts up a show on it. And that's also quite interesting.
Oh yeah, I remember it was last year when I came to do the trophy for the first time in Belgium, and he was one of the guest artists there as well. He was center stage, and I was right hand stage.
Yeah.
But he was working on a big taxus at the time, and I remember he got out a giant chainsaw and just hacked half the tree off and started carving away at it in front of the audience and making a whole bunch of noise, and all the sawdust is flying everywhere. And then he'll hold like 4 or 5 tools in each hand.
Yeah, true.
While he works. I don't know exactly how that works, but it looks cool when you're sitting in the audience.
Very cool. And he can do the trick, but I tried it as well. But for me, I have something wrong in my brain, and it's not possible to work that way. So,
so while you were there basically in the fall, correct? Because I remember you and I actually met for the first time at the Taikon 10, which is the big exhibition in Kyoto in November. I remember you came into the event. You had a little less spiky hair then than you do now.
Yeah.
And I remember after you came up and we met and talked at Fujikawa-san's booth, you walked away. Fujikawa-san looked at me and was like, "Was that guy Tom Cruise?" Apparently everybody in Japan thinks you look like Tom Cruise.
Yeah, true. And at the beginning when I was there, I had spiky hair, and then they all called me David Beckham, like, "Oh, you are David Beckham." And I was like, I don't really look like him. And then because we had to work from 6 to 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and we had one holiday day in a month. And the first time I went there, I thought, "Oh, I have holiday," but you had to go outside of Shunka-en, and then you could go, and then so you had to go to the town or to Tokyo, and then you had holiday, more or less.
Because if you stayed at if you stayed near the nursery, he would make you work.
Yeah, yeah. And so the first time it was like 6:30 or something, and he took me out of bed, so I had to work. So because of that, my hair grew, and I had, like, how do you call it, Tom Cruise kind of style of hair. So I went then to Taikon 10, and then they all were like, "Oh, you look like Tom Cruise." So it was quite funny, yeah.
So while you were there, you were only there for a 5-month period. That's actually a pretty decent chunk of time. But during that period, was Mr. Kobayashi good about letting you work on good quality material?
Yeah, yeah. On that perspective, I had quite a lot of luck because he let me work on quite some nice material, so that was quite fun. It was also because Jin-san was just there as well, and Osamu-san also. So, and there were Peter Warren came sometimes in busy periods, and Akiyama-san and Fukita-san and stuff like that. So, and they could take an eye on us. So I think we were quite happy that they were there and they could help us and teach us techniques as well, because Kobayashi also was always busy with Chinese customers and stuff like that. So when he had time, he came into this into the, how do I call it, to the working area, and he showed us techniques and stuff like that. But we also learned a lot from Akiyama-san and Peter Warren and Valentin Bros and Fukita-san. So
yeah, it's nice. Last time I was at Mr. Kobayashi's place, I asked him how many apprentices he's had over the years. And he told me somewhere in the neighborhood, I think he said like 60 is what he told me. So, and he of course includes you and all of the other students that have come in from Europe or, you know, Southeast Asia or China or all sorts of different areas. So you mentioned Jin-san, who was your senpai while you were there. Jin has kind of become, I guess, Mr. Kobayashi's second-hand man.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so he sort of runs the operations there, and he speaks multiple languages. I know he speaks English, Chinese, Japanese, of course, and maybe another language or two.
Yeah, could be possible. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's one of the guys that when we go in with our tour groups, if he's there, he'll guide the tour group around, and he'll do it in English and explain, you know, the tokonomas and the setups there. So, you know, for those who are listening to this podcast who don't know what Mr. Kobayashi's nursery looks like, maybe you could kind of describe what it is. It's technically a museum, but maybe you can kind of describe what the setups are and the tokonomas and all of that.
Okay, yeah. So actually, when you are in the neighborhood, you wouldn't say that there is like a bonsai nursery there. But when you go into the environment and you go into Shunka-en, then you see a peaceful area with a lot of trees and a lot of high quality trees. And then you go through the entrance, and then you first see, when you go straight on, his private collection, more or less, in a circle. And close to there is also a pond, and then on the right side is his workshop where we work and where he also teaches classes to people and stuff like that. And then on the left side is an area where he does have like high quality pots and stuff like that. And if you follow that way and go to the right, then you go to the place where people or where visitors can talk with him and stuff like that. And he will talk about his books that he has on the market, and he will sign a book for you and stuff like that. Then we should then go because that's also the place where we have breakfast and stuff like that. If we then go to the right, then you have like the museum, and there they have like different kinds of tokonomas, and then he explains about the museum, how it was built and what kind of wood they use and stuff like that. And then I think when you go up, then he has like his really old antique pots museum. So it's quite incredible to see. And then all around there's all the other trees that are for sale and stuff like that. And also customer trees and how do you name it? But I think since my last stay there, it also changed a lot. So I don't know how it looks now, more or less, but I should visit them again one time.
Oh yeah, definitely. Every year that we go, we take our tour group there, and every year there are big changes that happen, and more trees and less space for things. It gets more and more crowded. He's got stuff up on all of the roofs around the nursery now. Which is kind of cool. But, you know, you were mentioning the shingyo, so the sort of formal, informal, and semi-formal way of displaying. So I think what you were referencing was the three different tokonomas that are in that first room that he has at the museum. Each one of those represents the shin, the gyo, or the so. So one is formal. I believe shin is formal. So that tokonoma has the black lacquer wood that runs along the base of it. And then I think the one next to it is the semi-formal. So the gyo. Is that right? Yeah, the gyo. So so the gyo has still really nice wood, but it's usually a lighter color lacquer.
Yes.
More of a brownish kind of color rather than the dark black of the formal tokonoma. And then you have the informal on the other end, which is just natural wood, right? Yes. So you get the mix of those three. So when you were there, did he have you with the other apprentices set up some of the displays?
Yes. The things what he did, he would talk with us about getting this tree and that tree, and then he's asked someone else, like, you can take this table and that table and that table, and then we had to set things up, and he said in which ones we had to set up and on which scroll we had to use and which accent plan or tempi and stuff like that, and then he explained why he would use that one and why different kinds of things, and also why to put the one in the shin and why in the Q on the show. So it was quite interesting in my opinion. So
yeah, that's very cool. I know, with formal display in Japan, or just display in general, particularly when you're doing it in a tokonoma setting, in his nursery there with the museum, almost every time he does a display, he'll set it up with the scroll. And usually the scroll, it could have some sort of scenery on it. It could have an animal on it. It could have writing, Chinese characters on it. But typically the scroll is, it's supposed to aid in the viewer sort of understanding the season that the whole display is supposed to represent. And usually the scroll is meant to indicate the upcoming season. So for example, if it's like September, it's still hot in Japan, but you do a scroll that has something that maybe has like an autumn moon on it, for example, so that it sort of indicates that the autumn is coming. Or in the spring, say in like February, for example, or maybe even March, you do a display with like cherry blossoms. So it indicates that the cherries are coming in the next month or weeks or whatever. So it kind of gets your mindset thinking about the season to come, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool though. Yeah, true.
Yeah, that's awesome. So after you finished at Mr. Kobayashi's nursery, you came back to Belgium and then set up your Yama bonsai studio, right?
Yes. I started building the house, and then we set up Yama bonsai studio. And the thing what we do is I have students, and I also travel around to give classes to students. And my students come every 2 weeks. They come back. On the ones who follow classes during the week times, and the ones who follow classes during the weekends, they come each month, one time a month. So that's quite good for them, and we can follow up the trees and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay, so and you're doing the teaching yourself for the most part, but you also have guest artists come in on occasion too, right?
Yes. Like we had you a couple of times, so very interesting. Everybody is very happy with that. We also have a school with Manuel Germade. We are now in our 4th year.
That's amazing. I can't believe how quickly time flies by.
Yes, time goes very fast. You wouldn't say so, because it's like when we saw each other in China, like that it was like 1 year ago or something like that. But I think it's already 3 or 4 years. No, 3 years?
Yeah. When we saw each other in China, that was 2016. I think in December, so it's almost 4 years ago.
Almost 4 years, and you wouldn't say
that's crazy, yeah.
And last time when you were here was also,
that was probably 2015, maybe.
I don't know.
2014. It's been a long time.
Yeah,
I don't remember much of it because we spent most of the time drinking beer. I remember we went out to was it Eindhoven?
Eindhoven,
that's the Netherlands, right?
That's the Netherlands.
Yeah, just right across the border there.
Yeah, I live close to the border, so Eindhoven is 30 minutes from my place. So it was quite fun.
Yeah, no, I remember I was like, all right, we got to the workshop tomorrow morning. It starts at like 8:30 or 9 in the morning, so we got to leave Eindhoven by 2 so we can at least get 5 hours of sleep. Yeah. We ended up not getting back until 7 in the morning.
Yeah, I didn't know
slept for like 30 minutes. Yeah, and got up the next day and did the workshop. I thought I was going to die.
Yeah, I can believe. But the work you did was good, so
It was, yeah,
nobody complained.
I've developed a good poker face, I guess. Living in
Yeah,
Japan all those years, going out and drinking with Fujikawa-san and the other apprentices. You have to get through the pain the next day and just do the work.
yeah, true. But we all get older and wiser, so
This is true.
I don't go out a lot that often anymore. So it's not that that style of living is passed away.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I can only handle about 1 or 2 beers and then I feel it the next morning. So
Yeah,
I
you're
got to
the
be
same.
careful.
You're the same. So
Yeah. So the last time I saw you was actually in was it Brazil or no? I guess it would have been at the Trophy
yeah,
last year. But right
yeah,
before that, about 6 months or 8 months before that, we actually ended up going to Brazil
Brazil. Yeah,
to
that's
do
true.
the. I don't know if it was the Brazilian national event or if it was just uh, Chikao's event at his place. I can't remember how they billed it, but in any case, it was a lot of fun. We went to was it Belo Horizonte, I think?
Belo Horizonte.
Yeah, in
Yeah, that was
Brazil.
perfect.
There's a really cool facility there owned by a guy named Chikao. Really, really cool guy. He's been growing junipers in the ground for, I think, like 25 or 26 years, twisting them up
Yes,
every
something
year.
like that.
They're
Not
Formosana junipers, which are the Taiwanese junipers, but he let them grow to, like 20 feet tall. So what's that, like 3, 4, 5 meters tall?
something like that.
And then graft Itoigawa down at the base. So you and I got to work on some of that material down there, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Because that mindset, I also start now with creating trees or growing trees into into the soil and stuff like that. But also a couple of weeks, I contacted them if maybe it was possible to import some of his trees to Belgium and stuff like that. Because what he did was really, especially in that time, to have that idea to do that in Brazil already, it's quite interesting. But if because like in Europe or maybe the United States, no one has done it before. Not in the way he has done it. So it was quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he took basically the model from Japan, from Taiwan, and
Yeah.
just followed it to the T. And everybody, I remember when we were there, he told me that everybody, 25, 26 years ago when he started doing it, everybody was making fun of him, saying that, all you're doing is twisting up these little whips. These will never amount to anything. But he was playing the long game and
Hmm.
did it for 25, 26 years. And every year he'd plant a new batch in the ground. So now that we're at that point where everything is big enough to be collected, every year he's got at least 100 plants that he can
Yeah.
then collect out and then start working on. And the technique that he was using down there, I forget what it's called. I think it's Sidao, Shidiao, something like that.
Sidao, yeah.
Sidao. It's a technique from Taiwan for creating deadwood on junipers, like a peeling type technique. He's sort of mastered that technique down there. He had some really cool kind of modified dental tools that he would
Hmm.
work with, and he showed us how to do that sort of peeling technique. And it was something I had never really done before, at least not to that degree. But some of the
Hmm.
work was just insane. I thought it was
Yeah.
really cool.
Also the work and the material was really insane. And the trees where we could work on, they were incredible. I still remember the one you had to do as demonstration
Mm.
that I had to help you, and that was quite an incredible tree. I I wonder how it looks now because it was really cool tree. Awesome.
Yeah, actually, Mauro Stemberger, he was there with us while we were
Mhm.
there, and he has actually gone back, I think, at least twice a year since then to do a school with the junipers at that location. So about, I think, maybe 6 or 8 months ago, he sent me some photos of those trees, and they're actually developing pretty nicely. I mean, we did a lot of heavy duty cutting and deadwood work on them, so I was actually kind of concerned that portions of the tree might die completely. They
Yeah,
didn't skip a beat. They did absolutely fine. So I think it has everything to do with the climate down
yeah,
there.
I think so.
As a matter of fact, when we were there, Chikawa was showing us how he does the approach grafts on those
Hmm.
junipers, taking the Itoigawa and grafting it to the base of the Formosana. And it was super simple. I'd never seen it done before. He just does a simple T graft. And he
Okay.
showed me how he did it. I mean, he just takes a simple box cutter, exposes the cambium on the whip, makes a
Hmm.
little bit of a notch in the Formosana juniper and just wedges the graft in there.
Yeah.
And he said within 6 months, he can separate the root system from the approach graft, and within a year he can replace the original foliage with all new Itoigawa foliage, which is crazy. It takes us here usually 2 to 3 years to be able to do that full process. You know, but for him it was basically a year to a year and a half. He could have total replacement of the original foliage, which is nuts.
Okay, that's really fast. We've done some couple of graftings here with Manuel, with the small skeins, or how do you call them, or the small whips?
Yeah.
And it took like I think a few months ago with one tree I removed old foliage, and it's now in its third year. So it takes some time. So, but it's because of the climate and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You guys have a little bit more of a, I guess, kind of cloudy, rainy, sort of cold climate for longer periods, I guess.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, it's starting to change. So this year we had quite a warm year. Normally, I think it looked like it changed. Like we got some Spanish temperatures here in Belgium, and like I talked with Manuel, and he had more like rainy days. So it looked like he had some Belgian weather, and we had some Spanish weather. So.
Yeah, the whole world is changing. So you keep mentioning Manuel. Maybe we should tell everybody who Manuel is. He studied at Taisho-en, right?
Yeah, true. He was a student of Taiga Urishibata. He's been there for 6 or 7 years, and we started the school with him. So because I can always learn and from everyone, I think it's interesting to have several people here, but you have to have like one tree per person that you use to learn something on, so that a tree will develop, stuff like that, you know. And that's why I think it's important that you can learn from everyone.
Yeah, that's one problem that I've noticed over the years traveling and teaching. Is that somebody will bring a tree to a workshop with me that they've already worked on with 4 or 5 other professionals.
Yes.
And everybody has a slightly different take on a tree. So it's one of those things where it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back every time you work on that tree with a different professional. So my recommendation to people always is, you don't necessarily have to work with just one person, but you should have, one tree that you focus on with that person, so you can see the techniques, come to fruition over 4, 5, 6 years, rather than bouncing around with that one tree. But you can study with 20 different people, just have a different tree for each of those people that you're studying.
Yeah, that's true. I totally agree with this one. So.
Yeah, most definitely. So, and that's one thing that we're trying to do here with our school at Eisei-en, and it sounds like similar thing, at your school with Manuel and with your students that come in on a regular basis, is get them to bring back the same tree. But I have no problem at all if my students want to go study, out at like Michael Hagedorn's place out in Portland, or, Boone's place out in California, for example. Everybody's got a slightly different take. Plus, each of those other professionals has a different approach to different things that I can also learn from. So if they're going to these classes and they pick up something that's really cool, if it's a better practice than what I had to begin with, why not adopt it? If it makes ramification faster on the tree, why not? If the grafts take faster, why not?
Here, I also say the same thing to my students. Also, when certain techniques or from certain species I don't know, and I know professional here in Belgium, like Danny Hughes, or you name it, I tell them you can better go with that tree to his place or something and follow some classes with him, so you can learn from that. But then they also maybe tell some techniques to me or something like that, and I can learn also from the same. So for me, that's very important.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's a lot easier to do that now with the internet, now that everything is sort of available online, I guess, or at least the information is more readily available. Because I know back in the day, everybody sort of hoarded the information to themselves, like kept it to themselves. They wouldn't tell anybody. And then you had all these big egos in bonsai. And there's still a little bit of that going on, but it's kind of fading out to some degree, which is a good thing, I think.
Thank God. So quite happy with that.
Yeah, most definitely. That's actually why I like coming and working with you as well. And Nancy likes it when I go and work with you as well, because there's no egos involved. There's some egos of people not far from you that sometimes get mixed in when I come there. I remember certain comments popping up online after I did some workshops at your place
Yeah.
from some local people. But aside from that, it doesn't really matter. Everybody's super cool, super chill.
Yeah, that's true.
And like you said, a lot of the students that were coming to work with me at your place also work with other guys in the area, or even travel to different countries in Europe and work with different professionals there. So everybody's got a different climate, different species, different techniques.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
it's nice to kind of draw from each of those. So.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk to you about in this podcast was your fertilizer that you're working
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
This is something new that you've started to develop. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what you've been doing with that.
Yeah, of course. So at one day I was working with my friend Patrick, filling up fertilizer bags with the Daiso tea bags that everybody uses and stuff like that.
Were you
And I
drinking
used,
Duvel at the time?
no, we were drinking coffee actually,
Oh, okay.
because it was quite early still.
Gotcha.
Afterwards, probably we have drank some Duvel, but yeah. But we were thinking, because it takes a lot of time and effort to make them, and I don't mind, but you can put that time or spend that time working on a tree or maintaining trees, stuff like that. So I was thinking, how can we solve this thing? But because of it, I use several kinds of fertilizer, and every time each month I need to fill the bags and stuff like that. So for over the past 5 years, I had an idea to put them in coffee pads. So, and since this year it was possible to put them onto the market, and we tried it. And from 25,000 bags, we now already sold 10,000 bags. So that's not bad for a new selling item or fertilizer, or how do you call it? I can get a bag and show you people if you want.
Sure.
It's this is the bag. It's nothing magical. It's just nothing special. It's just to for people to save time. This is just fertilizer and coffee pads, so you don't have to mix them up with real coffee pads. And it's so that the grains will stay into the pad, that the fertilizer goes, or that the feed goes through the soil of your tree, so that the soil will not, because when you work with fertilizer and the fertilizer goes into the soil, the grains will, how do you call it, and how do you say it in English?
Like clog up the soil?
Clog up the soil, so root rot will be, you will faster get root rot and stuff like that. So that was my idea, and we started to put on the market this year, because in here in Europe we don't have a lot of trees that are already trees that, how do you say it? We have a lot of trees that are still in development. So we used something with a high nitrogen, so they can have lots of growth and stuff like that. Now soon we're going to start also with an autumn fertilizer, and then from next year on we're going to start with a fertilizer that's mainly for trees that are already several years in development and that are starting to get their way into bonsai that are showable, or how do you have to say it?
Right, a little bit more in the refinement stage, I guess.
Yes, true. In the future, we're also going to adjust certain things, because we want to have the bags, or how do I have to say it, that they are even better and better in quality. And then we are going to mix it with a product so that the fertilizer will stay wet and very moist, so the fermentation will be better as well. So,
right, yeah, that's one thing I've noticed with some of the fertilizers that are being produced in the States. Some of the cakes that are made here, specifically for bonsai, they don't ferment very well. They stay very dry, so I don't think a lot of that, the nutrients are actually being absorbed into the soil, or leached into the soil and absorbed by the tree. So, actually, when we first started the nursery here a couple of years ago, I was looking for cheap alternatives that were also organic for fertilizer to use with the trees rather than using the cakes, which can get quite expensive. So we have something here called Hollytone, which is a powder. But like you said, it's a pain in the butt to put the powder in. We were putting it in tea bags at the time. And actually last year, my in-laws, Nancy's parents, came to visit us for a couple of months. So they would spend, 3 or 4 days just filling tea bags for me with the Hollytone. But that got a little bit laborious, I guess, and took too long. So I decided to switch over to something else this year. But you did send me some of your fertipads to work with here. And I wanted to sort of experiment with those on some of the trees that we had at the nursery that were looking a little bit weak, for example. So I had quite a few trident maples that we had defoliated in May. We had the second flush of growth, and it had finished out by about mid-June or so, maybe the third week of June. But the second flush on all of those was kind of a yellowy color. It wasn't really a dark green at all. So I decided to use the fertipads on those to see if we could, fix the issue with the leaves. And I tried it on a few different other trees as well. But the tridents, I saw the biggest difference in color change with those out of everything. So after I put them on the third week of June. And what are we now? We're at the very end of July. So I'm guessing that those probably last about 4 weeks, like a typical technique, right? So, that gives us a full 4 to 5 week period right there. The difference in coloration from beginning to end was like night and day. All of those tridents have greened up completely. So, which is really cool. And I have other fertilizer that's from the States that I've been using as well. That's also organic. And I didn't see as much of a change in the color on the other tridents that I used that fertilizer with. So, maybe you could kind of give us a breakdown of the macronutrients, like the NPK value. And then, if you've got any additional sort of micronutrients that are included in there, so I give people an idea.
So we have the NPK value is 10.48, and then we have magnesium that's +2. So we have made these organic mineral fertilizer, especially for bonsai, to have a good and direct grow. And also there's magnesium included to get extra color and for the production of more chlorophyll, if that's the right English word. So yes. And also there's something in it to have a better root system and a richer soil life, or how do you call it?
Right, like the biodiversity in the soil.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think all of those things are good. All of the micronutrients like the magnesium, molybdenum, zinc, copper, all of that kind of stuff. That's really what's going to change the coloration in your leaf. It's I think people mistake the macronutrients, the NPK, for actually giving you the greener color. Although nitrogen does help green up, leaves to some degree, but it's more of the micronutrients that are going to help with that. So having that kind of stuff in there is a really good thing. That's one major difference between using like a synthetic fertilizer and an organic fertilizer. Most of the synthetic fertilizers don't have good amounts or any micronutrients in them. They just focus on the NPK. There are exceptions like Osmocote Plus. The plus means that it has added micronutrients to it. But typically, if you can use organics are going to give you a better result, better biodiversity within the soil, and greener leaves on the tree. Because essentially, that yellow coloration that I was getting with the tridents, it could have been any one of those or multiples of those micronutrients being deficient in the soil, and that's why I was getting that. It's basically what's called interveinal chlorosis. So the leaves turn yellow, but you can still see the sort of green veins of the leaves. And I think some people mistake that for overwatering or for sunburn, but typically that's just a sign that it's lacking in micronutrients. So having something like that that's going to build that up in the soil is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So how can people access your fertilizer? Where can people buy your fertilizer?
They can contact me on Facebook, or they can send me emails, or they can go to my web shop, and it's at www.yama, and then what's the
dash
and then bonsai.be.
.be. Okay, cool. I'll put a link to that in the description of this podcast and videocast, so everybody can click on that and just go directly there to check that stuff out. Are you able to ship that in large quantities outside of Europe? Say if somebody in the States wanted to buy some?
Yeah, that's possible. So
okay,
if you would be interesting or someone else, that would always be interesting. So we can talk about the stuff. So
all right. We'll be in discussions. We can load it up in the online shop at some point. So
yeah, who knows? It would be nice.
Cool. All right, man. Well, thanks for joining me on the podcast. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add, or you good?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much for inviting me for this podcast. Looking forward to see it online. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'll have this up in a jiffy. So in the next couple of days, we'll have this up online. And for those of you who are listening on the podcast version, on the videocast version on YouTube, I'll put overlays across the whole podcast so you can see Shunka-en Nursery, you can see Yannick's place, you can see what the workshop looks like, and then some more details like that. Plus, sometimes the Zoom recording, which is what we're recording on right now, doesn't come through very well. But the cool thing about YouTube now is that it automatically generates subtitles. So everybody can see exactly what you and I are saying to each other, even if the audio quality sucks.
Okay.
So cool. All right, man. Well, I'm hoping that next year in February that they'll actually be able to do the trophy in Belgium again. With the coronavirus situation, it's a little difficult, but they've invited me to be the guest artist or one of the guest artists next year. So if everything goes through, I hope to see you at that point.
Yeah,
catch up, maybe grab a beer with you.
Yeah, of course. Definitely. We will definitely do. We will not go to Eindhoven though.
No, definitely not. All right, man. Thanks for joining me on the episode, and I'll talk to you next time.
Okay. Talk to you next time.
All right. Later, man.